How's it going, everybody? Today I'm here with my friend Patrick, aka Stallion, who's doing $40,000 a month selling products on Amazon. Super excited to get into his journey as a seller. But if you just want to briefly introduce yourself, man, maybe let us know how you got into the crazy world of Amazon. We'll just roll from there. Super excited to get into your story.
Absolutely. So I started selling on Amazon actually a year ago last week. So when we're filming this, it was literally a year ago.
Happy
And it was
anniversary then. That's a big
definitely
day. Yeah.
exciting. And it honestly started super passively. So I've always been reselling, always did sneakers, anything I could find value in, I would resell. Like I remember a couple years back, we were in Marshalls. I was just walking through and I had a bunch of friends that were super big into coffee. And I just saw all these expensive espresso machines. I'm like, this is at Marshalls. I'm like, there's gotta be some way I can resell this and stuff like that. I've always been like super big into selling. And there was one day where we were just looking up liquidation stores just in our area. And it was this Amazon return store. Still wasn't on Amazon yet, but was like, oh dang, like all these Amazon returns. And they had this method where each week they would bring out like a bunch of new inventory and everything in the store, no matter what you found, was $14. Every Friday they would bring out a bunch of new gear. And my wife, she actually picked up like this Funko Pop set. And I was like, dang, that actually like for $14, like it looked like it was like limited edition, super expensive. And we looked it up and actually on eBay it was going for 80. Let's buy one. Let's just see what happens. Buy it and list it. And then within a week it was sold. And it could actually be something like, let's go back like the next
Oh,
Friday.
yeah.
Because every Friday they would bring out new stuff. And then we just continued that model for about a few months. And it started to slow down a little bit. I'm like, okay, how can we, because it was already like super successful. I was doing a couple thousand in sales just on eBay. I'm like, okay, how can we scale this and build this to be even bigger? And so I was like, can I buy the Amazon return pallets? Is that something I can do? And I started to look into, thing that's expensive. I don't really want to get into all of that. And so then that's when I just came across like the algorithm of Amazon and like actually selling on Amazon. And it started off with books, which like I feel like everyone at some point.
You have to. It's a rite of passage. Whether it was 2 days, I'm sure you probably moved on from that pretty quick. Like I got stuck in that for a year. It's just everyone's rite of passage.
I definitely was doing books for a lot longer than I should have. I remember I was watching like Greasy Resells and I was consuming a lot of his content at first. And I remember I saw all this stuff about books and I probably did books for about 3 months until one day I was so sick and tired of Goodwill. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. Like I'm done looking up books. I'm just gonna go all in and just continue to do RA. Because I was doing RA on the side, but I was like, there's so much more like profit margin if I continue to do
Yeah.
books, but then not realizing like how slow they were selling. We started to do more like RA. So start to do like Marshalls, Ross, all those type of stores. And I want to say September is when it really started to pick up. And so September is when we started to, I'm like, wait, I think I could actually like do this full time. Because with probably like 3 or 4 months behind me in sales, I was like, okay, a few $1,000s in sales. And this is very passively. I'm like, if I go all in on this, I think we could actually make this a full-time living. So in September, transitioned out of my full-time job and started to just push this super heavy, put like all the capital we really had from just what we were making on eBay straight into the business, roll into Q3, roll into Q4. And it's just, that's where we got started.
Yeah, that's a great little kind of bird's eye view into the business there. I'm excited to touch on a couple of those things. And for any of you guys watching, RA, like some of these terms, basically is just going out to a retail store, going out to the Adidas outlet, that kind of stuff, pulling out the app on the phone so you can scan the products. And a lot of people will tell you that driving from store to store, like doing retail arbitrage, it's not scalable. Like you can't make that much money with it. But clearly, you're doing $40,000 a month. And the margins are a lot better than doing those online methods and stuff. I'm sure you're cooking there. Your family's eating good. Yeah. So for those people who they're like, how are you doing 40K a month, like driving from store to store? What kind of things did you put in place where it really started to become scalable for you?
I think it was super helpful that when we started, it was towards the end of the year. So actually, I started to do it right after back to school season. And I had
Nice.
no idea what back to school season was until like literally the day it ended. And I remember I found like two backpacks and I listed them and they sold. And I was like, dang, this is awesome. And then it just starts to slow down right after that. I'm like, if I would have known this 2 weeks prior, I would have been golden because I was literally already in those stores, but just didn't know like a ton about it. But I would just say what I did initially is I literally looked on my map and I said, okay, Marshalls. And I would see all the Marshalls in the area. I would do Ross. I would see all those in the area. And I would just put them all in a saved folder in an Apple map and then just figure out like, okay, what's the best way to hit all of them
Yep.
where you're not like zigzagging all over the city. And so where it's like you can hit like 6 or 7 stores in a few hours. And then obviously it's like repetition. So the better you get at it, the more you're gonna get out of it. And so you get to a spot to where you know what you're looking for because most of these stores, they tend to get all the same products from distribution all at once. So if you find 2 or 3 winning products at one store, you can probably jump to the next and then find like the same products and maybe even
Yeah.
more. And then that product might lead you to another product and then it just rabbit trails.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say that's like the biggest complaint with most people, like any Amazon businesses. Like, I can't find stuff to sell. So, do you remember in the process of you're talking about hitting the bargain stores and all that kind of stuff, and then hitting the Ross and the outlets? Like, at what point in the process did it start to become more second nature for you to look at products and be like, oh, let me scan that, let me skip this? And how long were you just scanning everything to like figure everything out?
I think there was like one day, 1 or 2 days where we would just go, me and my wife, we would go in the stores and just scan everything. And it helped because she had, it's obviously buy what you know what you buy. So there were products that she knew from like TikTok that were like trending. There were products that I knew that were doing well. And honestly, just from like already reselling selling stuff on eBay, I knew like what brands were good. And then obviously like my experience in tech, I also knew like different models of things that were really good. And so just having that like past experience, it was really easy. Oh, this is actually like worth it. Oh, this isn't. And then also you just, the more you scan, the more knowledge you're going to get. And you probably need 1 or 2 days where you're just scanning everything in the store. And then you get to a spot where you're like, okay, I know that's like a no-name brand. I know that this is actually a big brand. It might not be profitable now, but I might run into something that is profitable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you writing anything down? Are you putting anything on sheets, or is it all just off the dome like experience? Because a lot of people like they look at it and they want some way to shortcut to success. A lot of times there's no shortcut, right? Has it really
Right.
just been putting in the reps, building that mental knowledge, or do you write anything down or anything like that?
I think in the beginning, I did write stuff down. You honestly just reminded me, like when I first started, when I would scan everything, I'm like, oh, if I pay $5, I can make 15 on this. But I was gated in it. And so I was like, okay, Carhartt, let me like throw that one in the folder. And so then I would throw these different brands in the folders so that once I got to a spot where I'm like, okay, let me go ahead and get ungated in a few things. I had a good list of things that like I was either finding in public. So then like whenever I came time to get ungated, I'm like, oh, sweet. I already have 3 or 4 things that I know I'm already finding. So let me go ahead and work on those real quick.
Yeah, that's smart. You can know where to focus the ungate energy, because that's another issue for retail arbitrage and stuff. And I'm even curious on this one. Like, how do you go about figuring out when to ungate a brand? Because obviously you're probably having to buy it online and maybe break even, make a little bit of money, that kind of
Right.
thing. Like, how do you do ungating as a retail arbitrage seller?
I think it's the more I see it, the more I'm gonna get it. First, if I see something that's profitable, I'm like, okay, like I'll shelf that, I'll remember that. And then if I see it a second time, like, okay, like I'm starting to see this more often. And then if I see it a third time, or if I see it just in bulk and I look at the chart and everyone's selling out of it, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like it's time to get ungated in this because this is just money I'm leaving in the store.
Awesome. Yes. And then are you just going online and finding an invoice? You doing some sourcing for something profitable? What's the system there?
I think when I first started, I would get stuck in the loop of trying to find something
Yeah.
that was profitable. But if you get out of that mindset and just find something that's cheap that you can use to get ungated, that's going to be the best way. Because if you can go ahead and get ungated quick, you'll make that money back in a quick, like
Yeah, it unlocks the
2 or 3
potential.
runs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just worth it. And for any of you guys who don't know the whole ungating method, all that kind of stuff, like typically you're just like buying 10 products from any website, put your info on it. I've got a full YouTube video on the channel if you guys want to check that out after you hear Patrick's full story here. So as far as moving forward into the business, right? I know you mentioned that growth process a little bit. Was Q3, Q4 when you start to get like that holiday demand? Was that when things really started popping off for you, or was it just random?
It was a mix of things. So I think it was a mix of figuring out what stores were good in my area, but then also what times of weeks were good. Because obviously, when you're first starting off, you don't know, is Monday a good day? Is Saturday a good day? Is Sunday a good day? And you really start to build that flow into your week. So I think learning like what days were good, I think figuring out what products were good, definitely Q3 and Q4 helped because there were a lot of things that I was able to like FBM doing 0 day handling, which definitely was super clutch because I wasn't doing that. And then I saw one of Miles's videos about it. I was like, this is definitely something I want to do.
As many times as we tell you guys, I hope it's loud and clear from the rooftops that FBM 0 to handling is the way to go.
And I think figuring that out, and it sounds super meticulous, but it's like as I was sourcing, I was like either had a YouTube video in my AirPods playing in the background, and a lot of it would go in one ear and out the other because it's there's so much knowledge when you first start. It's literally drinking from like a fire hose. But if you just continue to like listen to it and continue to hear it, then one day like you're gonna hear something like, oh, like I can now do this, and it just all starts to click. And so I think a mix of just all those things is what really helps propel us into Q3 and Q4.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you're just putting in reps with picking up little nuggets here and there, and just things start to click. Do you remember like how many months into your journey was it for you to feel a little bit more confident? Like you're not just guessing, scanning stuff on the shelf.
I would say probably October. And I have my custom skis built out to see like when I'm like sending stuff in and like when I'm buying stuff. And so it's like when I can look back and remember that those skis were the ones that were like the ones that were really propelling us forward because that was also when I had started to get better at learning variations and offer counts because there's so much content and there's also so many different methods to source that have so many different angles on it. And you really need to dive in and figure out like what's going to work best for you and what's going to work best for your model. And I think October is when we started to get comfortable. And I remember there was 2 products. I'm not going to name them because like they're still good products.
You
So
might
like
still be able to, yeah, you might still be
you
able to
can't
print
throw
on
'em out
them. Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But like the method is still like really helpful. And I remember I like listed one FBM and it sold within 30 minutes. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that was like $20 profit. And I just listed it. And so I went back into the store, bought 5 more. And then like a couple hours, they're all sold out. And I'm like, okay, what is it about this item? Obviously, I know it's a good item, but what is it about this that's doing really good? And I remember I just looked at the chart, took a screenshot of the chart. So I was still trying to learn how to read the chart. Now I can look back and see like the offer count was really oscillating. But I remember I took a screenshot of the chart. And so whenever I come across products that had that same looking chart, I'd be like, okay, like go ahead and buy it because it's doing the same thing that the one that was popping off was doing. So I think that was something that was super helpful as well.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to look at it. Like we do the same thing with all of our team members. Like the worst items they source, like when the ones that lost the most money, we'll look back and say, what did the chart look like on the day you bought it? And usually it'll be like, oh, the sellers were going up or the price was going down. And I think it's a really good exercise for all you guys watching as well. And so about 5 months for things to start really clicking
I
for you
would say
then. Yeah, that makes sense. Like a lot of people that I talk to say anywhere from 3 to 6 months where things start making sense. And unfortunately, most people they make it to week 3 and they're already out. Like they've
right.
given up.
There was definitely like a lot of small wins in there too that helps like that momentum that like helped me get to October. But I definitely say like October is definitely whenever like things really start to pick up.
Yeah, I love that. So if you're that beginner seller, you're a couple months in, a month in, like that kind of thing, keep going. Like it's supposed to be hard right now. Don't worry. Like
Right.
you're not alone on that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so as you were starting to scale, you talked about that one product where you go out to the store, you're able to buy and sell it over and over again. And you and I were talking about a different kind of Q4 product, one of those first like light bulb moment products for you. What was the story behind that product and kind of how'd you find that stuff?
It was just a day I was at the Nike clearance store. And I think if you have Nike clearance stores or Nike outlet stores, like you need to go in them just because there's always really good sales. There's always something happening. But I remember I was just going through doing what I normally do when I go to a different store. And I just scanned everything in the store and I scanned it and I was like, dang, this looks really good. And whenever I would first start off, I would get a couple different things in the store, just a test to see like how quick they would sell. And if they sold, then I would go back in the next day and get a ton more. But then that one was a little bit different because it sold literally before I was like halfway down the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and turn back around and get some more. And unfortunately, with some of those stores, they limit you on like how much you can buy. And so they would limit me with 5. And so I'd buy my 5 and then the next day buy my 5 again. And then I'd just start to see how successful that was. And I'd say, okay, like I'd call my wife, hey, let's go to Nike real quick. I'll get 5, you'll get 5. And then there were some days too where I'd be like, I'll get 5, you'll get 5. We'll bring our friends, they'll get 5. Then
That's
like
awesome.
buy them lunch or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's super funny. You're getting the whole crew in, beating those order limits and stuff. And another thing that I want to touch on a little bit as well is, you're doing a lot of like shoes and clothes and stuff. I know you also mentioned doing some Stanley Cups and all that good stuff as well. But what would you say about people who are like, oh, you can't sell shoes and clothes, it's not profitable? Are you just looking for better profit numbers? Like, how are you able to stay profitable in that category?
I would definitely try and stay away from like the crazy looking colors because
Sure.
usually those are the ones that people are going to return because they don't like the color. But someone's not going to return like a black shirt because they don't like the color black. It's they know that they're getting a black shirt. So like for us, it's definitely been good staying with like very generic things. So generic shoe models, generic colors, because those items tend to really move a lot quicker. And for us, it's about volume. So like returns are just part of doing things on Amazon. And if you can get like returns out of your head and stop focusing on returns, then you're going to do super well. But if you start like honing in and thinking like, dang, I just got to return on this, I got to return on that. But then you start to look at a month view and say, okay, what does that actually average out to? And how much am I still profiting? Like you really don't even think about the returns or even think about the people doing scams and stuff, shady stuff on Amazon. You just throw that out the window.
Yeah, it's one sale. You go buy 10, 20 more profitable products. Yeah. In the early days though, getting those refund emails, it's like
Oh, it
you
hurts.
get personal feelings hurt. It's man, like you didn't want to keep my item. What's wrong with you?
And then also just figuring out like other ways of like baking in margins to what you do. So even if you're doing RA, like you can still use discounted gift cards, you can be tax exempt. And so I try not to put those margins in like making an item profitable. I try and put those margins in like the back burner because I know I'm saving that money. So then if like down the road I get a return or down the road I get something that like is broken or lost, then like the extra money I was saving with like the discounted gift cards or the cashback or whatever, that kind of covers that up so to where you don't even think about it.
Yeah, I love that way of looking at it. It's just that bonus money kind of covers the extra headaches
Little
here and
buffer.
there. And obviously, you're crushing on Amazon. Is this your full time gig right now? You still have a 9 to 5 job, or what's you up to
So,
there?
so finished the 9 to 5 back in
Awesome.
September. And so it was definitely really hard in those first few months, but it's like seeing all the people around me and seeing like the growth that was coming. Cause I think each month, like at the end of the year, was like a plus 50% month. So I would hit one month and then it would double and then it would just keep going up. And so I'm like, okay, if we keep putting in the work, keep putting in the effort, this is something that we could do. And my wife was super supportive because she still had her 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So she was doing her 9 to 5. I was still able to pull out enough money from the business to continue to where like we were able to live the same, not change like our way of life. And then in January, she actually transitioned off her 9 to 5. And so now we're both full time in the business.
That's awesome. So you guys are just tag teaming it and living
100%.
life. That's awesome. What was that decision point? I know you said you're able to start pulling money. It wasn't a big deal for the business. Was there a certain number? Was there a moment where you're like, all right, I know I'm ready to go full time? Because I'm sure there's some people watching who are in that boat right now too.
I think for me, I've always loved reselling. So for me, I think some people, when they jump in the business, they try and jump in it because they don't want to work. And they think, oh, if I do Amazon, it's super passive. And I honestly get those people all the time that come up to and like, hey, is this drop shipping? Can I just go live on a beach and do absolutely nothing? And it's no, not quite. Like you still have to put in work and it's still a job. So you still need to work for it. But for me, like I loved work. And even all my jobs, like up to this point, I've always loved doing them. It was never like me trying to get out of something. And so for me, I'm like, okay, like I can work for myself. I can do something that was like always a dream of mine because even when I was like 16, 17, I always wanted to resell shoes and make that a full-time like living. But now figuring out like, oh, there's a more like stable way of making that work. I'm like, okay, like I see the profit. I'm paying bills. We're throwing money back into the business. And so we just took the leap of faith and jumped into it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's super cool that you guys have been able to just tag team on that. I'm sure the growth will be awesome from having all the time to be able to dedicate to
100%.
that. Yeah. So I know we've touched on it a little bit, but was there one specific moment that you can remember where it's like, oh crap, like Amazon can be a very serious thing for me? Like maybe one item where it's like it went crazy, or was it just that snowball effect over time?
I definitely think it was snowball. So I think
Yeah.
Q3 to Q4 was like that was when I really started to one get better at it, but then also had the bonus of Q3 and Q4 sales. And so like first 3 months, I'm listening to all these podcasts saying, like, okay, like Q3 is coming, Q4 is coming, and you have that in your head. You're like, okay, like it's gonna be big, but you don't really realize like how big it's actually gonna be.
Yeah.
And then those Q4 numbers start hitting like at the end of like Black Friday, and you're like, okay, like I'm like throwing out 90 FBM orders a day, and I'm like passing out, but we're just gonna keep pushing it. And then like Q4 hits, and it's like December 13th, and you're just like, there's stuff everywhere. You have receipts everywhere, you have bags everywhere, and I'm like, okay, obviously it's gonna slow down a little bit at the beginning of the year, but if we can systematize and get things squared away at the beginning of the year, like we can definitely keep pushing this even harder.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was the same for me. Just that snowball moment, like that, or that snowball like continues rolling. Like some people that have, like, oh, is this one product? I made like 5 grand on it. Oh, it's yeah,
Right.
it's like instant, but it's cool to see like the different ways it can happen. Yeah. So another thing I want to touch on is like a lot of people start and fail Amazon, right? Like it's a hard business. So why do you think that you were able to succeed where a lot of other people they fail at Amazon?
I think for me, I have competition as like
Yeah.
one of my number one strengths. And
Did
so like
were you an athlete in high school or something
no, it
like that?
wasn't
Like
an
okay,
athlete.
okay.
Honestly, it wasn't an athlete, and that's where it's funny. But I did a lot of like competitive like esports and video games, and I was just like, no matter what I did, I always have to be like better than everyone else that did it. And so I would just like, put in all the time, put in all the work until I was better than everyone else, and it would definitely be like super unhealthy, definitely very tiring. But it was just something that like I've always done. And so like up to this point, every job I've had has always been like, okay, like whatever industry I'm in, I'm gonna be the best at it. And so I think coming to Amazon was very similar because I'm like, okay, there's all these people that are super successful around me, but I want to be better than them. And so I'm gonna put in the work, I'm gonna put in the time, I'm gonna put in the research until I'm up there with them, and then I pass them.
Yeah,
So that's
I
the
love that energy. Yeah, it's always
mentality.
the super competitive guys, like that kind of stuff. I see it in the background. Where was it Halo 4? What you were in the
Oh,
lab on?
I loved Halo. I
That's
put so
awesome.
much time in Halo. That was like my like high school party trick to where it's like
Yeah.
everyone, oh, we can't beat Pat in Halo because it's just it's not even fun at that point.
Yeah, he'd clean up. Yeah, I was cracked at Destiny, if you know that
Oh,
one,
I
and
love
I
this.
I
That was
played a lot of
solid.
Halo Reach growing up as well.
Destiny had a good run. That was solid.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Were you like in tournaments and stuff for Halo?
No, never at that point.
Okay.
I did some one-off tournaments like
Yeah.
in COD and stuff, but Halo, like I just didn't jump the gun on it. If I probably focused in on it, I probably could have locked it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's super funny. Like it's a lot of like sports guys. It's people who played video games really heavily. Like it's all like the same like competitive
100%.
types that do really well on Amazon. Looking back to the beginning of your business, looking at the whole last year, was there anything that you would have changed to grow a little bit faster? Like anything that you had to stop doing that held you back? What would be that advice for that new seller who's watching?
Because there's so many different ways to take that. I think for me it was not buying something just because I could spend money. I think when you have capital, you get into a trap where, oh, I have capital, like I want to go ahead and spend it. And I think that's even something that in the last 2 or 3 months I even tried to relearn a little bit. Okay, we have capital, let's go ahead and buy stuff to try and get a return on it. And sometimes with that you get a little jumpy and you buy something that ends up tanking, or you buy something that doesn't do well, versus like when you're first starting off, you're very frugal and you're like, okay, like I only want to buy this if I know for sure I'm gonna make my money back on it. And so I think when you start to grow, continue that mindset of not being like too frugal, because obviously there is some risks that you could take and find some really great leads by taking those risks. But I think minimizing those a little bit by not going all in on something just because you have the capital, and really focusing on something that like if the data's there, go all in. If the data's not there, don't take like a educated guess on it.
You're just gambling, trying to get rid of the money. I definitely learned that lesson the hard way scaling as well. Like you hit a point where obviously you've grown a bunch of money with Amazon. So I'm running out of ways to spend it. Like we're getting too good
100%.
at it. And then yeah, you start to buy some
And even
not
taking
so
some
good
days from
inventory.
like, since we're heavily RA, there's days where like everything changes overnight. So we could go on a Monday and see nothing, but then want to buy everything just because we have capital. But then on Tuesday, see so much that's like moving left and right, but then we have no more capital. And so it's prioritized. Okay, like we're not going to find anything today, and that's completely fine. Or if we're doing OA, we're not going to find a ton of stuff right now. But if a sale hits tomorrow, then now we have the money to
Yeah,
jump on it.
you need to have that money to jump on it and
100%.
go crazy. Yeah, yeah, fill up the car. So I'm gonna make you call your shot a little bit right now. So what is your goal for the rest of the year, and what do you think is holding you back from that goal right now?
I really want to hit 800,000 in total sales.
Love it.
So right now we're at 300,000, and we just crossed that like a couple weeks ago, or I think this last week crossed 300 in the last 12 months. I really feel like if we continue to scale, we can get up to the 800 mark. The only thing that's stopping us is just the capital, because like we have all the products and all the great inventory to continue to make that happen. It's just building the capital and generating like the wealth to make that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think 800 is too easy of a goal for you, man. I think you can do better, but I'm excited to see you make it happen. So for that guy or girl, just wrap us up here. If they've got $0 in sales, maybe they made $1,000 in sales, they're really just trying to get the ball rolling. Like, what are the most important things they should focus on to really get serious about their Amazon business?
I think the biggest thing is watch videos, listen to podcasts, consume like all the knowledge you can, can. It's something super easy, but get like a notebook out or even like notes in your phone and just start writing stuff down like that you're learning, or even like questions you have. Because I think something that's great is like what these guys do is they're always hosting live streams. So if you have a question about something that's like really detail oriented, just write that in a note document. And then the next time they're live, just start like spamming that in the chat until they answer it. They might get annoyed by it. Once they answer, like obviously don't ask it again. And like now you have the answer. But that was something that was super helpful for me, is like I'd be outsourcing and I'd have a question like, dang, like I wish like I had someone like to ask about this real quick. And I put it in my notes. The next time they were live, I would have like 4 or 5 questions just like,
Yeah, I remember seeing the questions start and you had no profile picture, and then the profile
Nope.
picture happens, and then the questions get smarter, and now here you're on the channel crushing it, making a bunch of money on Amazon. So I love your story, man. It's been awesome to see the growth. I'm excited to see you hit that $800,000 goal this
100%.
year. If anyone wants to reach out to you, I know you're an awesome follow on Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Where can they find you?
Stallion everywhere. So I'm Stallion on
Awesome.
Twitter, Stallion on Instagram. I don't really do a ton on Instagram, but right now I'm like moving on Twitter, and then on Discord, Stallion, but with an S at the end. So Stallions plural.
Sweet. Yeah, you got straight up. You have a great Twitter handle, like just
Easy
straight
to
up at
find.
Stallion. I love it. So sweet. Really appreciate you spending the time chatting with us, sharing some value today, man. If you guys did get value from today's video, please feel free to subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Also, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to drop those down below. Appreciate your time again, Patrick. Thanks to you guys for watching. I will see you next time.